Odysseus took a sip of wine and looked at those present. The light of the torches trembled in the eyes of the Phaeacians. Then he continued. When I departed from Troy, the wind carried me to Ismarus, the city of the Ciconians. There, still full of euphoria over the victory, we did not resist the temptation. We disembarked with swords ready and took what we found: gold, silver, wine, and food. Everything our hands could carry. My men, drunk with triumph and liquor, did not heed my warning. I begged them to leave immediately, not to expect reprisals. But no, they wanted to celebrate on the shore, as if the danger did not exist, as if the gods were not watching. Dawn brought the answer from the Ciconians. Mounted on swift chariots, spears held high, they came down from the hills with the fury of those who protect their own. They attacked us with a violence that drove back even the bravest. We fought, but there were fewer of us and the terrain did not favor us. By the time I managed to rally my men and force them to flee, we had already lost many. We dragged the wounded to the ships, and when at last the sails billowed in the wind, we left behind us a coast bathed in blood. The sea, with its unpredictable will, pushed us aimlessly to another shore. Exhausted, we went down in search of water and food. It seemed a quiet place. No walls, no armies, no roar of battle in the air. Just trees rustling in the wind and a sweet scent wafting on the breeze. I sent 3 men to scout. They went into the thicket and did not return. When the wait grew long, I went out to look for them with some companions. We found them sitting in the grass, with lost eyes and a vacant smile. In their hands they held round fruits, golden like the setting sun. "What are they doing?" I asked. "We eat lotus," they answered in a strange voice, as if they no longer remembered who they were. I understood the danger. That fruit robbed them of their memory, filled their heads with a senseless calm, a peace that took away their desire to return. They clung to it as if it was the only thing that mattered. When I tried to take them to the ship, they protested, resisted, cried like children who do not want to be separated from their mother. There was no time for pleading. We dragged them, tied them with ropes, loaded them onto the ship while they cursed as if we had condemned them. I ordered to set sail at once before more of us fell under the spell of the lotus. The sea greeted us with its usual fury, but at least we were masters of our memories. The shore disappeared behind the waves, and night covered the sky. No one spoke. Everyone looked at the horizon, trying to guess in the mist the silhouette of another land. The wind was pushing us towards a new destination, a place where a giant awaited us, with a single eye and a strength that no man could match. But that's another story. The island had a wild feel to it. From the deck we saw hills covered with tall grass and sheep grazing silently. No houses or roads were visible, just mountains and the sound of the surf pounding the rocks. We disembarked and explored cautiously. We went deep into the earth and found a huge cave with a stone sheepfold at the entrance. Inside, the smell of milk and wool filled the air. There were cheeses piled in earthenware jars and buckets overflowing with fresh milk. My men wanted to take what was there and leave before the owner returned, but I decided to wait. Maybe we could get supplies more safely. Time passed and no one arrived. The men insisted on taking something, but curiosity got the better of me. Perhaps whoever lived there was a righteous man, someone willing to receive us with hospitality. We soon regretted it. As the sun began to set, a heavy sound echoed at the entrance. The earth shook with every step. A giant appeared at the entrance, his shadow covering the cave. He had only one eye in the middle of his forehead. His body was huge, his skin thick and covered with thick hair. In one hand he carried firewood, and on his shoulders he carried lambs. With a movement he closed the entrance with a huge rock, trapping us inside. He saw us. His face twisted into a grimace of surprise and then into one of hunger. He sat down and, without a word, reached out his hand. He grabbed two of my men like rag dolls and slammed them to the ground. Before we could react, he devoured them one after the other. The rest of us stood still, paralyzed, our stomachs churning. There was no way to move the rock. We had no weapons capable of killing it. We lay there, sleepless, listening to his heavy breathing until sleep overcame him. In the morning, the Cyclops got up, led his sheep out, and closed the cave behind him again. He left us trapped with fear and the smell of the meat he had devoured. When he returned at dusk, it was all over again. He killed two more and lay down to sleep. I knew that if we didn't do something, soon there would be no one left. I came up with a plan. Among the items we had brought was a wineskin of thick, strong wine, a gift from a Trojan priest. I waited for the monster to finish his dinner and approached him with the wineskin in my hands. "Drink this, sir," I said, trying to hide my despair. The giant took the wineskin curiously and drank greedily. The sweetness of the wine pleased him, and he asked me for more. I gave him as much as he wanted. When his tongue began to get tongue-tied, he asked my name. "My name is Nobody," I said. Polyphemus laughed with the awkwardness of one who has drunk too much. "Then Nobody will be my last prey. But not tonight." His voice died away and his body fell heavily on the stone. He slept. He was breathing heavily. It was time. I pointed to my men. We had found a thick log, sharpened it in the fire until the tip was burning. We lifted it together and with all our strength plunged it into his eye. The Cyclops awoke with a scream that shook the cave. He writhed, thrashing against the walls, wrenching the stake from his face, crying out for help. He stumbled over his animals, knocked over milk jugs, and dropped the rock that sealed the entrance. His hands searched the air, but he could no longer see. My men cowered against the wall, waiting for the final blow. Outside, the echo of their pain reached the other Cyclops. No one dared to approach. Polyphemus bellowed, "Brothers, no one has hurt me." From the hills answered confused voices. "If no one has harmed you, suffer in silence and trouble not the gods." The giant wept, covering his face with his huge hands. While he wailed, I was already thinking about how to escape from the cave before it was too late. I knew that the only way to get out without being caught was under the belly of the rams that Polyphemus zealously guarded. In the darkness of the cave, I whispered my orders to the men. We tied each of us to the underbelly of a strong ram, holding on with our hands and feet so as not to fall. When morning came, the Cyclops, still complaining of his pain, ran his hand over the backs of his sheep to make sure no intruders escaped. However, he never thought to check their bellies. So, one by one, my men and I made it out of the cave and ran to the ship, where the few companions waiting for us greeted us with relief. Exhausted but relieved, we climbed aboard. Some fell to their knees, thanking the gods for our escape. Others hugged each other, laughing in disbelief. But there was no time for celebration, for the danger was not over. I ordered us to row with all our might to get as far away from the coast as quickly as possible. We were moving away from the island when, in a fit of anger and satisfaction, I could not restrain myself. I turned towards the shore and shouted at the top of my lungs, "Cyclops, if any mortal asks who blinded you, say it was Odysseus, son of Laertes, the plunderer of cities, the man from Ithaca." The silence was broken by the desperate cries of my men. "Stop, Odysseus, do not provoke the gods!" But it was too late. Polyphemus, hearing my name, raised his arms to heaven and cried out in a voice of thunder, "Hear me, Poseidon, god of the seas, if indeed I am your son. Let not Odysseus return to his homeland. And if fate grants him to return, let him do it late, in a shipwreck, without companions and finding misfortune at home." A shudder ran through my men. They all looked out to sea, fearful of what was to come. Poseidon heard his son's plea, and his fury was not long in coming. No sooner had we left the coast than the winds began to blow violently. The waves rose up like walls of water, hitting the boat with force. The rudder shook uncontrollably, and the oars snapped in my men's hands. "Hold on!" I shouted, trying to keep us afloat. Night fell quickly, enveloping us in a darkness that was only broken by the lightning that illuminated the sky. The rain fell in torrents, blinding us while the wind swept us aimlessly. We did not know where we were going, nor if we would get anywhere. The waves tossed the ship from side to side, and one of my men, unable to hold on, was swallowed by the sea. We had no time to mourn, for the storm gave us no respite. Each blow of the water was a sign of the sea god's wrath. For hours, we were the plaything of the currents. Desperation was evident on the faces of my companions, their hands trembling as they clung to the ship that threatened to break in two. All we could do was hold on, hoping that the storm would at some point cease. But Poseidon had no mercy. The gusts of wind swept us farther and farther away, aimlessly, with no land in sight and no hope of knowing what awaited us beyond the horizon.